So I went to the movie store to rent the 1983 remake of Breathless, starring Richard Gere, because I love Richard Gere, and it's directed by Jim McBride, who did The Big Easy, and I love The Big Easy. Unfortunately, they did not have that film at the video rental store. So, and it's not streaming on the internet, so I'm not sure how I'm going to get to see this movie, but I'll find it. So I have to break down and buy it on DVD. Instead, I did a follow-up of the film I watched yesterday, Hunt for the Wilder People, and I rented this one, which came out in Australia in 2014, but it was a U.S. release last year in February, I think, last year. Obviously, I couldn't see it because I only watched films directed by women last year. But it was one of the ones that I remember seeing the trailer a million times and thinking, I would love this. So I finally got to it. It's written and directed by Jemaine Clement and Taika Waititi. Jemaine Clement, you will remember, did Flight of the Conchords, and I fucking love Flight of the Conchords. They was one of my favorite. Second season, not as much. The first season is one of my favorite shows, like seasons of television ever. I used to watch it a lot when I was in grad school. When I was like sad and overworked and depressed, I would just put it on and like zone out. It's good for that. So, this was based on a short that they did like 10 years ago, and they developed it into this feature. And it also has Rhys Darby from Flight of the Conchords, who was also in Hunt for the Wilder People the other day, and a handful of other actors that must be like from New Zealand. I didn't recognize them, but the one guy looked really familiar, and I forgot to look him up before I started recording, sorry. But essentially, it's a mockumentary about a bunch of vampires living in New Zealand. They sort of explain why they're in New Zealand, how they got there, what it's like to be a vampire in New Zealand. Hold on, I'm looking this guy up. Yeah, I guess I haven't seen anything else that this guy's been in. So the original short was called What We Do in the Shadows, interviews with some vampires. That's funny. Okay, anyways. So it's a mockumentary about these vampires and some werewolves and some other things and like what it's like to be a vampire. And originally you're just following these guys, and they're sort of like, one of them is sort of a Nosferatu-esque, and one of them is like Vlad the Impaler, and one of them is more like Dracula, what you expect from Dracula. And they run into werewolves, and eventually this guy that they were trying to kill accidentally turns into a vampire, and that causes shenanigans because, as anyone who's familiar with Twilight knows, new vampires are horrible and hard to contain. And there are a lot of little jokes that some of the jokes are very like vampire mythology jokes, and some of the jokes are very just stupid puns, and it's a nice combination of sort of vampire history jokes and stupid puns, basically. And I'm a fan of stupid puns, so I enjoyed those. There's also bits with a woman who is one of the vampire's familiars, and she's being treated like shit, and she has this one speech about like basically sexism, and it's pretty funny. It's pretty funny. There's it's a satire, so there's bits of like social commentary, heightened by these ridiculous vampires, but it's commentary on modern society. And then there's bits with werewolves that's quite funny, and apparently there's going to be a sequel with the werewolves, so I'm looking forward to that. Taika Waititi has a couple of other films that he directed, so I'm hoping to find those. I know his short that he was nominated for an Oscar for. He lost to Andrea Arnold, which, you know, if you're going to lose somebody, at least lose to Andrea Arnold. Is on YouTube, so I'm going to watch that probably maybe tomorrow. And keep on with his filmography, because I think he's kind of an interesting filmmaker. Although he's making his next film is the Thor movie, and I didn't see the second Thor movie because the first Thor movie was just so terrible, and for the most part, I really don't care about the Marvel films, so it's kind of a bummer. But then, you know, I'm yawning. I try to be, I apologize for that. I try to be a completist with filmographies for directors that I like. Notable exceptions, I did not watch the Tim Burton Planet of the Apes, so sometimes I don't complete filmographies. So we'll see when a trailer for this Thor movie comes out. I'll decide. I like Chris Hemsworth, so we'll see. Anyways, this was What We Do in the Shadows. It's 2014 from New Zealand, 2015 in America. It's a comedy. Actually, it was the best reviewed comedy from last year, and it won the Golden Tomato Award for Best Comedy from Rotten Tomatoes. I remember this because I worked there at the time, and I thought, wow. But this movie, like, everyone loves this movie, and it's very, very funny. So you should check it out. I obviously rented it, so you can rent it. I don't know if it's streaming anywhere, but, you know, see if your town has a rental store that's still open, because I'm sure you can rent it on Amazon or whatever, but I feel very strongly about trying to keep video rental stores open. So if you have one in your town, it costs the same, except that you have to maybe drive to it, and it's not like instant, but whatever. You're helping the economy, you're helping the video stores.